Everyone, it is Shaman Busy yet again with AFFCNY's pre-conference interview series. Jumping right into the next interview I did. This next workshop title is called Unraveling Addiction and Adoption. Let's check out what we had a chat about. So let's jump right into our interview. Beth, why don't you take a second, introduce yourself, and just tell a little bit about how you're connected to the adoption and foster care community.
Yeah, hi, I'm Beth Syverson. I adopted my son when he was 7 months old from Japan, and he's now 19. So when I adopted him, I had no idea about adoption trauma. I didn't know anything. I was super naive, and he was great until he was about 12 or 13. And then he got into substances, and the mask fell off, and he just had a lot of mental health crises and struggles with addiction still. So from 12 or 13, we don't know exactly for sure, until now, 19, he's still struggling. So that is my story, and I'm trying to help other adoptive parents to do things differently than I did.
Well, I see that. So let's dive in a little bit. So right now, let's talk about the fact that right now you are also a music teacher. You help disabled children or adults.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of work? How did you get into that, and what made you feel that is your
Yeah, so my
desire?
whole life before my son Joey had this crisis a couple of years ago, my whole life has been music. I played piano since I was 3. I've been a music teacher. I have my master's in music history of all things. And I teach right now, my specialty is teaching people with intellectual disabilities. So I'm teaching a vocational class. And so I have a real heart for finding everybody's passion and feeling like everybody has something to offer in music and in the world. That's kind of like my whole philosophy of life. Like everybody has something very worthwhile inside of them. You know, it doesn't matter their skill level or how well they're functioning right now. And the same goes with my son. And so it's kind of this holistic way of looking at people and just seeing a whole person and believing in them.
So let me ask you, when workshop presenters come and they're sharing personal stories, what drove you to take your personal story with your son and translate that to helping others? It's a big leap, because you do get there's pros and cons to it. So let's be honest. What made you decide to do it?
It was actually my son's idea, and I need to let everyone know my son is completely behind this effort, and it was really his idea. He had the idea to start a podcast. He was in recovery for a time, and he says, "Mom, we got to help other parents, because we didn't know, I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know what was available in those schools, what the kids were doing in class. It was horrible." And so he said, "Mom, we got to help these other families." And so I said, okay. So we made the podcast, and now I'm doing more speaking and coaching and things like that. And he is 100% behind it. I ask him every couple of weeks, I said, "Are you still fine with me sharing our story?" And he says, "Yes, Mom, please keep going, get it out there. I want this pain of ours to help someone else." So
that leads me, actually, that's one of the things in the workshop description that I read from you, because it says literally the question I can ask from that is, what does adoption have to do with addiction? And it even says that 43% more adopted people have a substance use disorder than non-adopted peers. How is that connected? How did you unravel that?
I didn't know that at all until I did a deep dive into adoption trauma after my son was in crisis. And after about a year of me spinning around trying to figure out what was going on, a friend of mine said, "Hey, isn't Joey adopted?" I'm like, "Yeah, what about it?" And so I got an adoption therapist. I read The Primal Wound, and then I saw Paul Sunderland's video about addiction and adoption. I can give you the link to that if you want to put it with this. And I was like, oh, that deep trauma, that deep pain would cause someone to want to numb out. I totally understand now. And now, if I had known that statistic, even just that 43%, if that's all you told me when he was little, I would have gone, oh, I better really pay attention here. I think that would have just changed so much. So that's what I'm trying to get out and tell other people.
So you also started a support group for adoptive parents facing the adoption challenges called Aptitude. Is that correct?
Uh-huh.
What exactly why'd you put that together? And what kind of things do you deal with in that group?
Yeah, so this is the kind of adoptive parent support group that, we dig into the tough stuff. It's not like, we isn't adoption fun, let's celebrate. It's more like, okay, our kids are really struggling. Our kids are estranged from us. Our kids are addicted or suicidal or have terrible anxiety or FASD or, so many things that our adoptive kids can have. It's not, a guarantee, but it's our kids are struggling in our group. And so this is a place for parents to learn about all of these, statistics and information and gather, that education, and also just the camaraderie and exposure. We read books together, we listen to speakers. I try to provide a lot of resources for adoptive parents like me, like what I was looking for when my son was in crisis.
So let's talk about your topic, unraveling addiction and adoption. What kind of things will you be, you said a couple of things, you're going to do some statistics and things like that, but give us a little bit more of what kind of dive you're going to go into that day.
Yeah. So I will be talking about things. I haven't decided how many, maybe 6 or maybe 10 things that I wish I would have done differently. So I'm hoping that some of the people that come to this are going to have younger kids, preteens or 8-year-olds or 4-year-olds, or, not dealing with substances yet, although I have an elementary school teacher that has seen drugs in her school. So you're really not exempt really ever. But so I'm going to share some things I wish I had done differently. So this is very much about, from the parent perspective, what can we do about addiction? Why do adopted kids, why is there that gravitation toward addiction? And I'll share, literally what happened with my son, what I've tried, what's worked. It's going to be very practical, and it's from my life experience. I'm no doctor. I don't have a fancy letters behind my name. I am getting my coaching certificate, but I'm just a parent. I'm just a parent, and I want to share my experience with other people to help literally save lives.
The last thing I usually ask everybody, I always advocate for the fact that every workshop, everyone should see, no matter who you are. Why do you feel that your topic is something for everyone to hear?
Yes, I think that this aspect of adoption and addiction is not talked about very often. I've glanced at, several conferences lately, previous conferences and future conferences, and there's no one talking about this. So I think it needs to be discussed. I think social workers and therapists should be thinking about this, to be aware. I think community members that aren't even related to adoption should understand this connection. We've run into so much blockage in our healthcare system and in the rehabs, and they just do not get it. They're like, what? He's adopted. What difference does that make? So I think the more we all can be educated, and believe me, I never dreamed my kid would be the one that was addicted. I would be like, no, we're a good family. This won't happen to us. This can't possibly happen to my child. So I was one of those. So if we can let everyone know that it can happen to anyone, and it's super dangerous out there right now with fentanyl. It's just such an important topic. I think everyone in the whole wide world needs to know about this stuff.